Thank you for joining us and welcome back to our channel. The relationship between Africa and China does not sit well with China's geopolitical partners. But a number of these partners fail to understand why China continues to rule in the continent of Africa. In this episode, I really want to look at the China-African relations, why this country continues to invest and also make Africa one of its strategic locations as compared to other Africa's geopolitical partners. It is important to understand that China has a 35 years and counting diplomatic visit that every year the Chinese foreign minister make Africa the first overseas trip. Let me say that again. For the past 35 years, China has made the continent of Africa, the foreign minister has made Africa the first destination that a Chinese foreign minister will visit at the beginning of every year. The recent visit was when Wang Yi recently traveled to the continent of Africa, where he visited a number of countries, including Nigeria. This tells you the strategic importance of this particular relationship.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is visiting Africa on a 4-country tour to Namibia, the Republic of the Congo, Nigeria, and Chad. The tour follows years of tradition by China's top diplomats of making Africa the first stop of their annual foreign relations agenda. CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy reports.
For decades, China's annual visits have reflected what analysts say is a deep-rooted partnership and mutual respect between China and Africa. According to experts, each trip is aimed at addressing key challenges facing Africa, from poverty alleviation and infrastructure deficit to sustainable growth.
China's relationship in the continent of Africa will continue to draw eyebrows, but I think there are lots of benefit with regards to how China treats the continent in a number of areas. Maintaining this 35-year tradition that Chinese foreign minister visits Africa on a first overseas trip at the start of the year. According to data from CARI, in 2022, the gross annual revenue of Chinese companies, engineering and construction projects in Africa totaled just over $38 billion US dollars. Africa made up 19.4% of the global revenue for those companies, down from the peak of 2010, when Africa accounted for just 38% of that particular investment. However, the top 5 countries were Nigeria, Angola, Algeria, including Egypt, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. These 5 countries account for 41% of all Chinese companies' 2022 construction projects that gross annual revenue in the continent of Africa. China has decided that Africa has something which it does not see in other parts around the world, and that is essential. Some analysts argue that Western nations at times see Africa as a problem to be solved, while China sees Africa as an opportunity to be grabbed. This is important. For example,
China has been advancing the concept of win-win cooperation, and they truly believe that as they engage and connect with Africa, they're able to grow as a country, but they're also able to help Africa make progress in various ways.
Over the years, the visits have enhanced diplomatic ties and overseen the establishment of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. This year's trip is expected to encompass discussions on major economic partnerships in the 4 African countries.
The 4 countries that the minister is going to visit, and Africa as a whole, is looking forward to enhanced cooperation in various areas, whether we're talking about infrastructure, where China has done fantastic work in various African countries.
Beyond economic interest, the visits facilitate people-to-people exchanges. Analysts are optimistic that both China and Africa will continue to pursue their common objectives in peace, stability, and development.
China has built over 100 ports in the whole of Africa since the year 2000. That means in 20 years, China helped Africa to build 100 ports. And They want to know also to continue to engage the continent of Africa. China has constructed over 100,000 kilometers of highway and 10,000 kilometers of railways. About 70% of seaports in Africa are a product of Chinese harbor engineering company, and Chinese harbor engineering company build 90% of the seaports in China. This relationship is not going anywhere soon. The continent of Africa needs infrastructural development and growth. It has come to a point where the criticism do not sit well again in the continent. That's why at the moment Africa has decided to make strategic engagement to look at partners where that comes with a win-win situation. So all this noise on that China's investment, it's on the other side, there are flaws involved, there are challenges that are involved. If you look at all talking about the debt trap, African nations do owe money to China, but a number of African countries owe their huge amount of debts from the multilateral institutions that claim to also support the continent of Africa. This is where the problem lies. Data has proven and experts have argued that Africa owes to multilateral partners than it owes to China. How can this be justified based on this particular relationship? A number of these institutions were formed when the continent of Africa, a number of those countries in the region, were not even nations themselves. And the Bretton Woods institutions and a number of financial organizations have come under severe criticism as a result of their inability to evolve, looking at current challenges that are facing the continent of Africa. So this question of that China does not represent, or it's putting Africa into debt trapping, it will continue to play, but the figures don't lie.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has met with Chadian President Mahamat Idris Deby in N'Djamena. Wang Yi, who is on the third leg of his four-nation Africa tour, said China is ready to work with Chad in implementing pact agreed on by the two countries. The Chinese top diplomat said China will provide support for Chad's development as the two countries work towards expanding relations. On his part, Mahamat Idris Deby sent greetings to Chinese President Xi Jinping, calling him a visionary leader who has led China to achieve great economic takeoff. While appreciating Chinese support for the development of Africa, Idno said China remains a strategic and trustworthy friend of Chad. The Chadian president also sent his condolences to the Chinese government and its Chinese people over the earthquake in Xizang. The Chinese foreign minister's first overseas trip of the year is always to Africa and is part of a 35-year-long tradition.
If you also look at the positive influence in the continent of Africa, on a multilateral level, Africans view China as a partner they can turn to for a variety of services, deals, and initiatives for which traditional partners turn them down or agree only on rigid terms and instructions. For the African Union, China is a partner that makes regional and multilateral organizations on the continent take them seriously. Since African Union gained a member seat at the Forum on African Cooperation, known as FOCAC, in 2012, it has worked on finding areas of aligning with China's own development plans. For example, at the latest edition of the FOCAC, which was also hosted in Dakar, the African Union harmonized its agenda of 2063 with Chinese development goals through the Belt and Road initiatives and other measures. So there are positives with regards to the relationship in several areas. So despite the criticism, China has a number of positives that it brings on the table that has shown the continent of Africa that they can copy from the Chinese model and to enable them to transform their systems and their economy. Look at the Standard Gauge Railway in Kenya, and looking at Mombasa and Ethiopia and Senegal. China has demonstrated that they are open for business and they really want to do something in the continent of Africa. There are over 10,000 Chinese companies that are currently operating in the continent of Africa. This compared to most recently that China has revised its operational strategy in the continent of Africa. So all of these pouring of Chinese businesses in the continent will definitely not sit well with the former colonial partners that the continent of Africa has been operating with. that lack the proper investment in the continent, which to an extent could be demonstrated visibly from the African people's own perspective. All of these things are relevant. It plays into the geopolitical cycle and the understanding of the people in the region. So we can't just keep talking while we are not making the relevant investment. The Lobito corridor is a very important strategic investment that the United States really want to get into. But the question here is, if the US does not deliver in terms of the Lobito, it's going to be a huge challenge for the United States of America's perspective in the region.
Well, CGTN's Penina Karive is in N'Djamena and has been covering Mr. Wang Yi's visit to Chad. Hi there, Penina. Penina, the Chinese foreign minister has already left Chad and is en route to Nigeria. What are the key highlights of Wang Yi's meeting with the Chadian leader and the country's other top officials, Penina?
Well, Hannah, it was a whirlwind visit by Wang Yi. He was here a maximum of 5 hours. He touched down here in N'Djamena at noon local time. That's 11 GMT. He was received at the airport by Chad's foreign minister, and he headed straight to State House, where he met with Chad's president Idriss Déby Itno. They had a conversation there. Part of the conversation, of course, was what you highlighted. We heard from President Déby Itno saying that China has been a trustworthy friend for Chad and that it's now a strategic partner for Chad. He said that Chad is appreciative of China's commitment, long-term commitment to Africa's development and especially Chad. President Déby also said that he is grateful and that Chad is grateful because China has always had this cooperation with Africa that he said was based on mutual benefits and mutual respect and equality. And he said that cooperation has borne fruit. He said moving forward, the two countries, especially Chad, he said, was committed to strengthening their cooperation and communication with China and that they would both defend strategic positions that are important to them. Now, on the part of Minister Wang Yi, he said first that President Xi Jinping was appreciative of the fact that China was the first international destination for President Déby when he got re-elected for his second term. He attended FOCAC last year, Hannah, and Wang Yi said that his attendance, of course, contributed to FOCAC being a successful summit. He also said that China is committed to helping Chad. He said that China does not discriminate regardless of a country's size or weaknesses or strength, and he said that China does not support bullying of other countries by some countries. That's what he said. And so he said moving forward, they are going to elevate their relations into strategic relations from bilateral relations. Now, after that, Foreign Minister Wang Yi headed to the Prime Minister. He was there briefly, Hannah. It was a closed-door meeting. We didn't get much details of what happened or what was discussed. And then he went to the Foreign Affairs Ministry, where he again was received by the Foreign Affairs Minister. Again, that was a closed-door meeting. We are as yet to get details of what was discussed in that meeting. But really, Hannah, no prizes for guessing why this visit was so important. It might have lasted just 5 hours, but it was profoundly impactful and significant, especially for Chad citizens. We had an opportunity to interact with them in the streets of N'Djamena just to get a glimpse of what it is they expect and what they think. And what we largely got from them is that they were saying China has so far done quite a bit for them as a country. This is a country that is underdeveloped, Hannah. I've been here several times. Infrastructure is barely existent. Sectors such as energy, water as well, barely existent. And so they are hopeful that these are some of the contributions China will have on them to elevate their lives. There's a lot of expectation here on the ground. They are saying that finally they can see a partner that they say they can trust will be able to help them move forward and progress their country. We did a report just as well to get views of some analysts from around the region, Hannah, on what this visit might mean. Remember, there's so many countries that he could have picked, Minister Wang Yi could have picked to come to, but Chad made the list. And so for that reason alone, a lot of guesses. France as well has been one of those international partners that we have seen getting ejected by Chad, and Chad has been saying that as it evolves, so will its relationship with the international community. And so it's no wonder that we are now seeing a key interest by Chad into countries such as China, whom they have described as an all-weather friend and a deeply respectful friend and strategic partner. And so this is a report we felt, Hannah. Just take a look and listen to the views of people here in N'Djamena.
If you look at China's African trade, looking at figures of 1992 to 2023, the bilateral trade with Africa, it's important in regards to this two relationship to move on. China-Africa's bilateral trade has been steadily increasing over the past 2 decades. However, since 2014, weak commodity prices have significantly impacted the value of African export to China, even as Chinese export to Africa remains steadily. According to data, due to supply chain disruptions caused by the COVID-19, the value of Chinese-African trade dropped from over $192 billion in 2019 to $176 billion in 2020, looking at past figures. However, the trade value rebounded in 2021 and continued to grow in 2022 and 2023, reaching over $262 billion. In 2023, Angola was the largest exporter to China from Africa, followed by the Democratic Republic of the Congo and South Africa. South Africa was the largest buyer of Chinese goods in 2023, followed by Nigeria and also Egypt. Like I said, this relationship is not going anywhere soon. China has invested in the continent of Africa, and if an investment is moving just the trajectory going up, it's an indication that something good is happening in regards to this relationship. And African nations, to an extent, they are benefiting. The visibility, look at the ports, airports across the region, everywhere. China has demonstrated that it is a partner that it really wants to engage Africa from different angles. So the criticism will continue to come, but I believe that China has decided to make Africa, like I said at my opening, that 35 years of consistent visit is no joke. This is a particular strategic fundamentals that China has decided that Africa is the region where it has seen opportunities in there, and it's going to build in on a win-win situation, that Africa will win on one side and China wins on the other. So instead of sitting and complaining that China has done this, China has done that, let other geopolitical partners go in there and showcase the continent of Africa, what they can offer. All this talk without action is not going to deliver any visible goods for the continent of African individuals or people. So Chinese engagement in the continent of Africa is not going anywhere soon. This relationship will continue. Let us know what you think with regards to Chinese investment and infrastructural development in the continent of Africa. If China has made any infrastructural growth and development in your country, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think with regards to the cat and mouse game between the United States of America, Russia, and China in the continent of Africa, and why China continues to eat into Africa's market and also engaging the continent from a strategic point of view. I want to thank you for watching. I will be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.